It's the biggest marina in the southern hemisphere now, so.
Well, I think it's very important, not only for Auckland but for the whole of New Zealand. You know, it's the starting point of a lot of our successful yachting.
It's here to stay, isn't it?
A lot of boats, nearly 2,000 boats in here, iconic, and we call it the heart of boating in New Zealand.
And my boating and sailing out of Westhaven has been through my whole life. Since I was a little wee girl till now, I've had such amazing connections with boating out of Westhaven. I always had all our boats at Westhaven, and boy have I seen the place change.
Being British, we naturally like it, for trade and for sport. Yachting or pottering about in small boats is popular in many parts of the country. But this good harbour here has become the main centre for the sport.
Westhaven was produced for the low-income boat owner of the Auckland Harbour.
Most people can't afford big yachts, so they've gone in for smaller craft, types they can build themselves and types that suit the conditions. Yachting is one of the joys of Auckland, and it's a joy to watch.
It was all just moorings and boats going aground, but it was a safe harbour. I mean, nobody had any money in those days.
No.
It just, it was, the boaties in the main weren't rich people.
How that has changed over the years.
Well, if you looked out the window here, there was, when we first started, of course, there was only moorings, and looked the other way and there was only a beach, no northern motorway.
We just potted about in the corner over here where the Ponsonby Cruising Club used to be. We used to go in there and moor up there for the weekend, for the week or the month, over the week, winter, and they were about that high off the ground. And they'd come up on a big ramp and they'd be all go, and I could walk underneath, right through under there, and the boats would be all above you.
We weren't a bit scared to row anywhere in the dinghy. We'd go up to Point Chev, the reef out there, and over to Chelsea Sugar Works. And nobody seemed to worry over you, and we were far from worried, but we survived quite easily.
I didn't get into yachting till I met John, and he happened to be building a yacht at the time, a small 22-foot-6 keel boat, which he afterwards named Heather. We got into yacht racing around the harbour, and that was the start of our yachting career, or mine.
I started in boat building, a company called Shipbuilders Limited in St Mary's Bay. The war had started. There were only about a couple of dozen tradesmen working there. Some of them couldn't even write. One of my jobs was to go around and get their timesheets, get them, write out their timesheets for them. I didn't want to be a shipwright, so I got myself a transfer to Lidgards, who were boat builders.
Well, of course, he was served his apprenticeship with my dad. He was several years older, and we always, as a kid, I always, you know, Jim Young was sort of God.
I'm very pleased with the young 43. I get so many people get hold of me to tell me that they've been around the world and how nicely they've liked their boat and so on.
This is Royal New Zealand Yacht Squadron, home of the America's Cup for New Zealand.
used to be a dance club called a Trillos.
And it was a sort of major event centre. It was your dine and dance place, and all the social events that were around the boating and around everything really took place at Trillos before the squadron took it over.
It was very, very successful. It was always packed, and you used to see the people getting out of their cars in their ball gowns and men in their tuxedos and tie. Really, this was, back in, like looking at back at the 40s or the 50s.
And I lived in the, I think it's a cookhouse now, down there. And Dad used to be in charge of keep Americans were coming in there in hordes to the dances, And if the Yanks started to fight or anything, he had to have one number to ring and they'd come down. And Dad used to tell me how he'd just say, which were the ones that were fighting? That went on. They just go and hit them on the head, knock them out. Then they drag them by the collar out through the floor and chuck them in the back of the trucks. That's what the Americans would do. They just hit them and pull them straight out. And, the military police? Yes, yeah.
The hydromania that grips Auckland through the summer reaches its peak a few days before the annual regatta. Always an incipient fever, it becomes an epidemic as 2,000 boat owners prepare their vessels for the great day of pleasure and highly competitive racing.
This is a picture taken, I think, about 1968 of me standing here with the boat pulled out, getting anti-fouled and painted. And the boats and this would all be full of boats. All this, as far as you can see, right around to Sales Restaurant, would all be boats pulled out for their winter clean.
It was quite a social affair to haul your boat out and sit on the hard at Westhaven here and fiddle about with your paintbrush and sand your bottom and, put your mask, your boot tops and things on there.
Well, Darcy Whiting, the Whiting family's absolutely been involved in sailing forever, literally forever. And Penny Whiting, of course, is still sailing. She ran her own sailing school.
And I'm 16. Men my father's age were coming down to learn how to sail Karuba.
And she was the first female member admitted to the yacht squadron, because when I was first a member, women weren't allowed. The only time women were allowed near a boat was what they called cake day in the summer, and that meant the ladies had to bake a cake to come out for the day, and then off you go. It was a boys' domain, definitely.
So I got two very influential men to put me up at the Royal New Zealand Yacht Squadron to become a member so that I could race my boat against the Commodore. And I'm at the middle rows with all the lovely old Commodores sitting in the front rows in the armchair. And then I was put up for new membership, and some lovely old gentleman in the front row stood up and he said, a woman. Will she use the urinal, or does she expect us to build her a toilet? That was their only reason why I couldn't be a member of the Royal New Zealand Yacht Squadron. So hence, I was the first ever lady member. And the following weekend, I decided to race avian against John Mackenzie. And lo and behold, we did beat him with an all-girl crew.
The squadron, well, I think you'd have to regard it as the senior yacht club in New Zealand. It's the only yacht club in the world that's won the Admiral's Cup, the One Ton Cup, the America's Cup, the Clipper Cup. Well, now it's won the America's Cup for the second time, which is the first time it's happened in the world too.
My name's Clive Carter. I've been down here in Westhaven since about 1972. The boat I've got now is Scarlet Fever. 3 of us bought it in 1990. While Ponsonby Cruising Club, which I belong to since the 70s, is a good friendly club and this sort of thing, and you get to know a lot of people, so you just keep coming down here and staying around Westhaven.
The club was really booming in the 60s, 70s and 80s. On a Thursday night or Friday night at the club, it was standing room only. There were like 150, 200 people there, and it was a place to be. It just absolutely boomed.
I think every Thursday you had a bottle of rum and flick the top off it, and the whole crew would drink the rum, and then they'd all, a couple of them would usually fall down the stairs and get carted away to hospital for a couple of days.
Yeah, Richmond Yacht Club is where I began back in '68 with our first boat careers. It's like a second family, I suppose, after you finish a yacht race.
I can remember a lot of times like the racing days when the excitement and everybody would be going out and you'd sort of be around the marina saying, you know, good luck, have a good day, and, you know, don't stuff up your handicap here. And I think everybody, you know, we knew everyone. It wasn't just a question of one person or another. There were so many characters. There were people who really loved racing and were very cutthroat.
Flap Martinigo lived in the existing Westhaven Marina office upstairs.
But he was a well-known sailing character who should have written a book about the stories that he told. But he was sometimes called a cheat, but he was certainly pushed things to the line. But he was a very clever yachtsman.
Excellent sailor. We didn't beat him very often once he got his boat in the water.
Impossible to beat.
Flap was a working man. He was a cunning yachtsman. He sailed one of my boats for quite a bit, Namu, for many years. I used to race with him for many years, race against him for many years. We used to barter over a bottle of gin. It was usually me that provided the gin.
And he raced his boats hard, as did my father, and they were the greatest mates. So every race that they did with whichever club down here, they also had a separate race within the race for the Hummel Cup. Flap was great, but he was the custodian that drove the tractor and pulled us out of the water and had greasy planks and slid us into place with the grease, and all sitting out on the hard for the winter. And dear old Flap Martinigo was sort of the one-man band that did all of that. Just an absolute character.
They ride the waves whenever the elements allow. But on one day in particular, this Auckland becomes a city of Sinbads.
It was in the 60s or even prior to that, it was fantastic. The 1,500 boats, 12 to 1,500 boats in it, and all in the harbour and things like that.
If there was going to be a race the next day, we'd be up at 3 or 4 in the morning to catch the tide and put the boat on the grid and we'd scrub away and get the anti-foul off the slime, whatever.
You're friends, but you're going to beat them anyway, you know? And that was I always like to beat, I'd like to be the first one over the line and get the gun. Didn't work out all the time, but I did a lot. I did a lot of racing and I got a lot of prizes.
Also, the club in the early days with the P-classes, P-class yachts came from Ponsonby, or Ponsonby Ponies, the junior rugby guys. They had a few of them down at Tauranga, and one of the guys put a P-class on the deck of a trawler and brought it up here, and Ponsonby adopted them as a junior sailing thing.
All boats are identical. The hull and spars cost about £25 and take about 6 weeks to build.
I believe a great success of youth yachting in New Zealand, any kid that can sail a P-class downwind and survive is going to be a good sailor. And you look at all our top yachties, whether it's Chris Dixon or Russell Coates or these current guys, they all started in P-class, and if a kid can learn to sail a P-class downwind, they're going to, and carry on, they're going to be good sailors. and every one of our top sailors is in that category. So I think if you didn't have Westhaven, we wouldn't have the international success of yachting.
It's still Westhaven now, that will never change.
I think that the beautiful walkway, the public access, you know, it is a case of people can use this space. It's beautiful.
Oh, I think it represents the home of the major yacht clubs and the sailors that belong to those yacht clubs going off and doing fine sailing all around the world. Everything. I think Westhaven's the actual mecca of marinas in New Zealand.
Westhaven is looking better than it has ever, really, and it's much more accessible to the general public, not just the boaties.
Absolutely fantastic. I think it's a real asset for the city.